folks who represent the 26 years of the work that we've been doing came together to celebrate that we've raised nearly $12 million over the last 3 years to build a new building at Juxta's current location. So we're located in Emerson and West Broadway. Some of you may know that. And we own now 1, 2, 3, 4 buildings and 5 plots of land on that intersection. It's almost half a block. When we moved in, we only owned 1 building. And we're going to tear down a couple of those buildings and build a new headquarters at the location. The reason why that matters is for a few reasons. Number one, it's the biggest campaign I've ever been a part of and Juxta's ever been a part of in our whole 26-year history. It's also important because Juxta is the only people of color-led arts and culture organization in the state of Minnesota with a budget over $1 million that owns its own building. And that's something I hope to change in my new seat at McKnight, because part of what owning a building does for an organization is helps to ensure that it'll be around for future generations. Now, that doesn't mean everybody should go out and buy a building today. I would actually recommend you don't do that, but it's just a significant milestone. And I just wanna, as much as I can, I wanna shout it from the rooftops so that folks know. And also, if you wanna pick our brains about how we were able to do it, we're happy to share that information with you. So I want to just pause for a quick second in terms of my background and just take a few minutes to get a feel for who's in the room. And Kais is going to put up a couple, 2 or 3 quick Zoom poll questions for those of us who are here in the Zoom. And it looks like there's 20 plus of us or so. And if y'all could just take a minute to respond to the poll questions, just so I have a sense of where y'all are at with regard to grant writing.
They're coming in, rolling
nice.
in.
Looks like it's about 50-50 in terms of who's written a grant. You know, somebody said, what does that mean, competitive grant?
Mm-hmm.
Let's see, it looks like almost 50-50 in terms of people who've received grants and people who haven't. And it's split with about half the folks being pretty new to grant writing, less than a year, and then about half the folks being 2 to 5+ years.
We'll spend about 20 more seconds, see if the last 4 folks want to take that opportunity to fill out the poll.
Nice. So folks can go ahead and fill out the poll as I'm talking to if you want, but that's really helpful for me to get a sense of where experience levels are. One thing I'll say, a couple things I'll say, just sort of additional information. My background is primarily in arts and culture fundraising, arts and culture, youth development, community and economic development. So my presentation and my remarks about grant writing is really gonna lean in that direction. Also, most of my fundraising experience is about raising funds for nonprofits, but I do also have a few things to offer with regard to grants to individuals, fellowships, and other kinds of awards to individuals. So thank you all for doing the poll, and I'm gonna go ahead and get us started. I have about 10 sort of tips and tricks that I wanna share with y'all. I have 7 slides, but I promised 10 tips and tricks, and I didn't actually count them, so we'll see how many there are altogether, but it's about 7 slides, so it should be really brief. The first point I want to make that I want everybody to sort of keep in mind is research, planning, and cultivating genuine relationships is key to being an effective fundraiser. And so I wanted to start by offering you all websites that you need to bookmark. And I offer 4 here. And I'm gonna see if I'm skilled enough to also get us to the websites of these nonprofit, of these resources, because I'd like you to be able to check them out. So then the Minnesota Council of Foundations, can you all still, well, I'm not screen sharing right now, so just one moment. All right. Oh my
Okay.
goodness.
You want me to put those links to those websites into the chat?
That would be great. Yep, if you could do that, that would be great. And now I'm gonna go ahead and screen share, starting with the Minnesota Council of Foundations. Can you all see that website? Great. Okay, so 3 things I want to point out for you with regard to the Minnesota Council on Foundations website. Oh, looks like it changed screens. Do you all still see the website, or do you see my presentation again? You still see the website?
Website.
I do.
Okay, okay. All right, so I'm not gonna click through, but I'm just gonna point out to you the 3 things I want you to take from their website. The first thing is, if you click on that news and resources area up at the top, and then go to resource library, there is a plethora of information under that resource library, from grant writing resources to foundations to best practices in running a nonprofit organization. So that's one thing. Their resource library, a really, really great place to start in terms of thinking about fundraising. Secondly, I want to point out again, also under news and resources, there's a link that says Giving in Minnesota report. And just one second, because this is one I actually do want to show y'all. So let me see if I can go back. Minnesota Council on Foundations. Okay, so again, news and resources and Giving in Minnesota. There's a report that they put out annually, and it's a free report, and it's called the Giving in Minnesota report. So the latest report is from 2020. Well, it was published in 2020. And can you all see that changing screens? You see the PDF now? Again, this is a free resource and it is absolutely invaluable. They produce it, I believe, every 2 years. So this first, or the second page in the report, which is 2018 data. Keep that in mind. Anytime you're looking at data, it's always going to be about a couple of years behind, right? Because you can't analyze the data in the very year that it's happened. But the first thing I would note about this page is they list the top 5 givers in Minnesota, the top 5 philanthropic organizations in Minnesota. McKnight Foundation, where I run the arts and culture program, is one of them. But we're not the biggest, right? Wells Fargo Foundation, Margaret A. Cargill Philanthropies, General Mills Foundation are bigger than McKnight. The second thing I would note is they also have on page 5 of the report foundations, corporations, and other philanthropic entities from other places, other states that also give in Minnesota. And some of these donors or foundations give more than foundations that are based here. So it's the Kellogg Foundation, the Ford Foundation, the Walton Family Foundation, Robert Wood Johnson Foundation. Some of y'all will be familiar with these because y'all been involved professionally or maybe even got funding from them. So I'm not going to click through the whole publication, but again, it's an invaluable resource. The next resource I want to point out is the Minnesota Council on Foundations.
So how would say, if someone was preparing a grant, how would they utilize that the Minnesota Council on Foundations website? Would that be more of a tool to use to identify maybe foundations to pitch your project to, or would that be just on what do they do?
Yep, that's right. These first 2 resources are places you can go to get a sense of who are funders in Minnesota and whether or not there's alignment with what you are seeking resources for. So that's the place to start with in terms of your research, is to go to those foundations' website. So that's the second resource I just wanted to share with you all, is the Minnesota Council on Nonprofits. And I'm gonna screen share again and go to their website. All right. Okay. No, that's not it. Oh. All right. Can you see me now? Can you see nope, it says it's closed. All right, let's try it again. Do you see the Minnesota Council of Nonprofits website? Okay, so the same set of, a similar set of resources, but a different view. The first resource I want to point out, which I think is the most invaluable resource on their website, is under membership, and then it has membership list. I'm sorry, let me go back. Here we go, back to Minnesota Council on Minnesota Council on Foundations, I'm sorry. Membership, and then member directory, and then you scroll down and all of the foundations and corporations and other philanthropies that are members of the Minnesota Council on Foundations are listed, as well as their websites. So to your question, Kais, this is where you want to start, right? You want to research, you want to plan. What you don't want to do is willy-nilly send out proposals, make one proposal, and then just send it out to all the to everybody, listed in the Council of Nonprofits website. Again, you want to take the time to do the research and ensure that the work that you do is a good fit with the work that this foundation or corporation seeks to fund. All right, I'm going to go back to my presentation. And then, all right. And then the last two resources I wanted to just highlight for you all is Propel for Nonprofits. Almost everything I've learned about running a nonprofit organization, I learned through taking workshops at Propel. So Propel is a good source for, yes, written publications and resources, but also for trainings. Lots of their trainings focus on things like strategic planning, how to build a board of directors, thinking strategically about your work. I'm sharing that because grant writing is really an exercise in thinking through and writing down your plan, right? So Propel for Nonprofits is just a great resource. And Propel is a unique organization for Minnesota. There is no other organization in the country that provides the kind of support for nonprofit organizations and nonprofit boards, et cetera, like Propel for Nonprofits. And then the last resource I linked here is Minnesota Deed. And the one thing I wanted to tell y'all about Deed, first of all, they have a lot of resources for small businesses that they link on their website. But the main thing they say right on their cover page at the link that I put here in the presentation is that there is no such thing as free money to start up a business. And I really want to dispel that myth, because I often hear people say, oh, there's hundreds of millions of dollars for entrepreneurs to start businesses. It's free money. It's simply not true. It's just not true. There is no free money that governments are giving away for folks to start businesses. What Deed can point you to is loan money. And at the moment, there is some money to help businesses with COVID recovery. So the state of Minnesota has a COVID recovery grant. But in general, this myth that says there's all this money and, if you can just access it or get the right information, you can get money to start a business. It's not true. Okay, number two, still along the lines of researching, planning, and cultivating genuine relationships. Here's three things I would suggest for you. Number one, volunteer or apply to serve on a grant review committee panel. I learned so much about raising money by reviewing other people's proposals and helping foundations and corporations make decisions about who they would fund. It helped me learn ways to be effective in writing your narrative. It helped me a lot. It really helped me learn what not to do often, those proposals that weren't funded. So serving on a grant review committee or applying, volunteering or applying to serve on a grant review committee is something I'd highly recommend. A couple that I can point you to locally, MRAC, the Metropolitan Regional Arts Council. They use a panel process for making grant decisions, and the Minnesota State Arts Board as well. So those are two local funders who use community panels that you might want to check into. Secondly, read examples of previously awarded or declined proposals. And some funders offer you the opportunity to come into their office, or in nowadays, sometimes they're online, to see grants that were successful or samples of grants that weren't successful. Sometimes you can just look at a fund, again, doing that research and looking at a funder's website and seeing who the organizations are that they funded. You can reach out to those organizations directly, and most of them will be happy to share with you a copy of their successful proposal, so that you can see what does a good proposal look like. And then the third thing I would recommend is to call and meet with potential funders before you apply. I would say don't ever just submit a cold proposal. Email, call, try to make contact with that foundation, because often what it's going to take for you to get that grant is to have somebody who's heard of you, who knows about your work, and who you've had the opportunity to get excited so they can be an advocate for you in that decision-making process.
And I could actually attest to that, if I may. Recently, we made an application for a community safety fund, and having two folks on the review panel was the difference between how we approach Black firearm ownership, and how we dispel a lot of myths about Black folks being spooked by guns, and not having a history of owning them, and that's just not true. But currently there was a funding opportunity, and having those two brothers on the panel review say, one, advocating from a culturally competent lens, which is one of the benefits of being on the panel review boards, but two, also being familiar with the work, because we do work, intangibly.
That's right. That's right. I mean, if you think about a grant review and decision-making process, say it is a panel process, and there's 10 people on that panel. If 8 or 9 people on a panel don't understand a proposal or don't quite get it, and are really sort of leaning toward no for this particular proposal, you got to have one person on that panel who's willing to say, listen, I believe in this proposal, I believe in this group, and here's why. Because if you don't, it takes a lot for a panel to try to sway 8 or 9 people, and they're the only one that supports your idea or believes in your work. So again, case in point, make contact with the foundation in part so you can understand what they're after, and so that they have some familiarity with you before you submit that proposal. Okay, next, I just wanted to give a quick overview of the kinds of grants that you all might be applying for. And for those of you who have applied for funding and been successful before, this is maybe rudimentary, but I just wanted to highlight it for folks who may not be as familiar. There's basically 4 types of grants that people are applying for, and that foundations and corporations make available. The first type, and for most people the best type, is general operating support. General operating support means it's funding that is unrestricted for you to do with anything that you need to do as a nonprofit organization in service of your mission. So it's really no strings attached, as long as the funding is being used to fulfill the nonprofit mission. Now, that doesn't mean you can just get a grant of $10,000 and then take it and buy a car and, you know, take a vacation and so on, unless that is what you described in your proposal and that is sort of the core of your work, right? So the work needs to be used in service of making the world better, which is what your nonprofit exists for. MRAC provides general operating support. The Minnesota State Arts Board does general operating support. McKnight and our arts program does general operating support. Generally, general operating support is available to nonprofit organizations. And often you need to have a track record. So for example, at McKnight, you need to have been in existence for at least 2 years to be able to apply to McKnight for operating support. A second kind of support is program or project support. That support is restricted support, and some of y'all have probably heard the term restricted and unrestricted support. What restricted support means is that you can only use the grant for the specific project or program that you told the funder that you were going to be using the funding for. So it is restricted just for that use. It can't be used for the other program, for another program that you've decided to do or that the community now wants you to do, because that's not what you applied for the funding for, unless you go back to the funder and ask the funder if you can change the use of the funds. And a lot of funders will be okay with that. A third type of support is capital support. That also is restricted support. Capital support means funding to pay for buildings, building improvements, or other kinds of infrastructure, hard infrastructure, equipment, other things that are non-consumable, right? So hard capital items. Generally speaking, capital support is something that you're able to get after you have a relationship with a funder, although there are some funders who specifically like to fund capital projects, and you don't necessarily need a relationship with them, but generally speaking, you do need to have a track record. So just, you know, the thought that you're brand new, you've not done any programming yet, you have an idea and someone's going to give you money to buy a building, that would be very, very rare. And then the last type of support is support for individuals, and generally those are grants or other kinds of resources that fall under the category of fellowships. So here locally, the Bush Leadership Fellowship. Kais talked about the DeVos Institute for Arts Leaders, which is an international fellowship that I was a part of. My partner at Juxta, Roger, was a Loeb Fellow at Harvard. There's a fellowship called the Shannon Leadership Institute Fellowship, Nexus Boards and Commissions Leadership Institute. We have a pretty robust set of leadership development fellowships and grants in Minnesota and also nationally. The thing I would just say about fellowships, and there's some folks even on the call who've been successful in applying and receiving fellowships because they're awesome leaders and folks want to invest in their leadership. But fellowships require you to think big about what you've done in terms of your work, your civic work, your work in leadership space. Why it's mattered, who you've been able to impact, and why the work has been important, and then what more you can do. And for a lot of leaders who do community-based work, applying for a fellowship is the first time we've stopped and asked about who we are and what our role is in the work, right? The first time I thought about DeAnna Cummings as a leader who was potentially deserving of $100,000 from the Bush Foundation was when I applied for a Bush Leadership Fellowship. Up until that point, it was always all about the work, and I was really in the background. So fellowships are also important, an important way to invest in your, to give you some energy as a leader, and to infuse, to help you get to the next step of your work as a leader. Oh.
Quickly, just to dispel any confusion, do you get paid usually for fellowships, or?
Some you do, and some yes, and others not, right? The Bush Fellowship has a cash stipend attached to it. I think the boards, the BCLI Fellowship at Nexus, I don't know if it has a stipend, but it's more about you have access to a suite of professional development opportunities. So what the fellowship is the learning and the community that you get by being a part of this cohort. Other fellowships offer travel to trainings in various places. To your question though, Kais, I found over the years, and in particular as a younger leader, the opportunity to travel and to learn from other leaders was as important, if actually more important than cash money. So
Mm-hmm. Yep.
yeah,
The experience also is compensation as well.
that's right. That's right. And to that point, just a pause. The fact of the matter is, when I think about leaders who are having the greatest impact locally and who have had impact over time, every last one of them has left Minnesota, whether it be for, a few weeks for a conference, but they've left Minnesota and been in community with other leaders doing similar work in other places and formed a sense of community with those folks. So I would encourage all of y'all who are thinking about, fundraising for the important work that you're doing to also think about how you can leverage opportunities to go learn from people in other places and contribute to their learning, right? You're learning from them and they're learning from you. And in particular, living in a place that is flyover country, sometimes we do work and we're in this little bubble and it isn't as good as it could be because we haven't seen how good it is in other places. And we think it's a lot better than it is. I'm just being real. So the opportunity to travel and have experiences is critical. And often fellowships can help you do that. All right. Next, I just wanted to just quickly run through what are typical proposal components. 5 things I just wanted to highlight. Typically, you're going to need to do an organization description. This is sort of why the organization exists and what its mission is and so on. You're next going to need to do a program or project description. For general operating support, it's a description of your work, what the specific project is that you want to do. Thirdly, you're going to want to describe your audience or community or the people who are involved and who benefit from your work. Fourthly, you're going to want to have a budget. And then fifthly, other things to keep in mind is that it doesn't just end with the proposal, right? Often funders are going to want to have a site visit. You're going to need to think about evaluation, and you don't want to forget about your final report. So I'll just say a couple of things about writing the proposal. The first thing I would say is don't tell them what you think they want you to tell them. Tell them the truth. That's advice I got from a mentor when I was a young director of Juxta, and he was helping me with with my proposal writing. I'm gonna say it again. Don't tell them what you think they want you to tell them. Tell them the truth. What that means for me, and I remind myself of this every time I have to write a proposal or something where I feel a need to be persuasive, you want to paint a picture of what you want to do, when, who will be involved, and why it'll make the world better, whatever you describe as the world. What you want to do, you want to paint a picture, right? What you want to do, when, who will be involved, and why it'll make a difference. You do not need to be eloquent or fancy or use buzzwords. You want to seek to be clear. And that's why I say paint a picture. The best proposals, I can close my eyes and I can picture really clearly what this organization or person is seeking to do, what the time frame is, who else is going to be involved in it, and why it matters. To that point, allow yourself plenty of time to write and edit, get someone else to read your proposal. Sometimes program officers at foundations will do an advanced review of your draft. But if you don't feel like you want to go that route, because you may not want to put something real rough in front of a program officer that might implant an image in their mind about your work. But find other people who've been successful at fundraising, or people who are familiar with your work, to read your proposal and offer you feedback. Keep in mind that every part of a proposal is important. Don't rush through the budget. When you put together your budget or you use a funder's form, typically there's a section for notes. Use that section. Think about the budget as another page of your proposal where you can sneak in additional information, because part of the problem with proposal writing is those very limited character boxes that they give us. So you can't say everything that you want to say, but you can use the budget. So instead of just saying 5,000 staff, say 5,000, and in the notes, say $500 each for 10 people, and then list them out: executive director, project manager, 5 artists, 4 apprentices. I don't know if that added up to 10, but you get the point.
Yeah.
The last thing I would say is plan beyond the proposal and project. This is a mistake that people make, and something we ran into at Juxta all the time. We're so busy, first of all, trying to raise the money, and then we raise the money, and then we do the project, and then the project's over, and then woo, that's it. But that's not it. You need to be thinking about you need to think beyond the project end date. You need to think about evaluation. How will we know we've been successful? And how will we track that? So that is a part of your project plan on the front end. And often funders are going to ask you about your evaluation plan, right? Second of all, you're typically going to be asked to submit a final report, and don't skip it. You don't want to get on a funder's bad side because you were 8 months late with your final report. Put the final report due date on your calendar when you get notification that you got the grant, and then plan for when are you going to start on the report, who's going to be involved, who's going to take what sections. But don't leave it as a thing you do at the last minute, because now it's time to apply for another grant, and now you got a quick slapdash throw something together. And then lastly, I think this is my last slide. This is also just a point of advice. All money's not good money. And don't be so thirsty for every opportunity that you drink from every cup that's handed to you. That's how people get poisoned. What do I mean by that? Some of it I've already said. Don't take a shotgun approach and apply for every opportunity that comes your way. When you're getting started, develop your plan and work your plan and fundraise according to your plan. You put a plan together and it was for $50,000 and you're fundraising to implement that plan. Don't do another thing, add something to it because a funder said this is what they'd like to fund. So now you're just adding that on to what you were doing, and you begin to be a Frankenstein with all these appendages attached to you because you're trying to make yourself fit into every opportunity that comes across your screen. Don't do that. Again, make your plan and work your plan. And if what you do doesn't fit with a funder or a grant opportunity, then just move on, right? Find funders and grant opportunities that are aligned with your work and values. Don't chase the money. Attract the grants that are right for the work that you want to do. And with that, I will stop. And I think we will open it up for Q&A.
Yep. Well, thank you for, taking time to put together those list of 10, and it was 10, I believe I counted correctly. Also, you know, pardon me, like competitive funding strategies together to be able to share with us. At this time, we want to, create space to be able to engage and ask questions. So how we'll do it is we'll go off of my screen. If you want to raise your hand, if you're on the Zoom account, you can use the reaction feature and raise your hand. We'll go about whoever pops up first, and then just call it down. And then if there are questions on Facebook, our advocacy co-chairs, Quincy and Key, will be able to pull some of those questions in as well. And also, if you do not feel comfortable speaking up just yet at this time, we offer the chat as another communication channel to be able to ask your questions. So with that, Auntie, do you sharing again?
Somebody asked me to.
Yeah, someone did ask for the one slide.
Oh, okay.
Was it this last slide or the one before?
Oh, I'm not sure actually which slide they were talking about.
My contact, my Twitter handle, and LinkedIn. I don't really look at LinkedIn that much, y'all, but I'm gonna try to get better.
They said
my email, if you'd want that. Which one? Y'all want this one?
I think they want your information and that one.
Okay.
And I think they also want the entire presentation, so with the links and everything. And we could get that to those who registered, a copy of this presentation. So.
Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and take it down so I can see people, if that's okay. There we go.
Oh, I said stop video. My fault, Auntie.
That's okay. Yeah.
As we wait for those questions, I had a question about something that you had said in the beginning when you were talking about mentorship, because I think that's so important. And I think as we hear a lot of successful people speak about, their journey, everyone talks about their support system and the mentors that they're able to, talk to about many different things. And I was just wondering, were most of your mentors, or some of them, or all of them, did you seek them out, or did they kind of seek you out, or was it kind of just something that kind of came together?
Yeah. It's a mix, right? As a young person in high school, my very first mentor came through a formal program. I was a part of a TRIO program. Some of you maybe are familiar with the TRIO program. It's for gifted and talented young people who are at risk of not being able to make it to college, not being able to graduate and not being able to make it to college. So I signed up to be a part of this TRIO program. My mentor that I was assigned in that program, who I'd get together with on a sort of monthly basis, decided after her 1-year commitment that she was going to drop out of the TRIO program. I was her third young person, so she had been involved for 3 years. She decided to drop out of the TRIO program, and she said, because I'm just going to be your mentor for life. So that's how me and Lorraine Berman started rocking. And may she rest in peace. She passed away 25 years ago now. I would say the next person that I would count as one of my mentors, John Spokes, who I quoted in the presentation, is somebody who I was just working alongside, who I would always lean on and say, could you help me think about this? Or I'm struggling with that. Similar to how Kais described how he and I got to know each other. I was always a young person that was curious, and that and still do love to sit at the elbow of elders and just pick their brains. So in some cases, that's how someone came to be my mentor.
I think that, thank you for sharing that first off, because that's really profound. Oh, I'm sorry, it looked like I was connection error. That's really profound, and I think something that I found along my journey as different mentors have kind of stepped in my life. I've sought out like one of them just because of our connection. I was like, yo, you have been amazing. And now Dr. Heather is just like a pillar in my life, if you will. But a lot of those mentors that kind of have fallen into place, that kind of have been that support system, I didn't realize that they were mentoring me until kind of we were into that. And so as I heard you speak about that, I was just starting to reflect upon my experiences and how profound they've been, but also how largely they've got me to where I am right now. And in the actualization of my potential, right? But also in my mindset and how I critically think about things, and how sometimes naturally back then I just like, oh, well, this is how I feel, this is what it is. But now I find myself, well, let me think about how I feel about that. Or, let me write this down and just kind of reflect on this for a couple of days. And I realized that that's like rubbing off of from my mentors. And so it's so important that we have those. And that's why I was thankful that you said that, because it allows us to grow in ways that we didn't know were possible. Yes. And so I thought that was beautiful.
Yeah, a good mentor, whether formal or more personal, sort of just happens, is somebody who can see in you the potential that you can't yet see in yourself. So it's both that support piece, but then also will challenge you because they see the potential, will challenge you to go further, to be better than maybe you're currently showing up. So it's both of those things, and you need both, right?
Yeah. Or to think differently about this, take a day. We did have a question from Andrew, so I wanted to provide that space for you, brother.
Yep, can y'all hear me?
Yes, I can, yes.
First, thank you, Ms. Cummings, for this, and thank you for the other hosts for hosting such great information, and obviously on this collective. I see there's a lot of other people that I got to respect and love for, so it's a great honor to be with such other individuals. But my question relates to something that you actually talked about in regard to when you're moving around in other space, and you called it flying overhead over the top of us. And I found that interesting, the way that you kind of phrased it. And for me, I took that as, like you said, sometimes the work that we're doing, once you're able to go around other spaces, you're able to quantify your work differently and calculate your work differently. And so my question was more layered in two approaches. One is that, do you feel that is unique to a Minnesota approach, in terms of the work that we're doing here and some of the work that we're trying to do here? And do you believe that it is, for a person who is doing this kind of work and has been doing it so prominently in these kind of spaces, can you speak to some of the tack or some of the things that maybe is some of the testimony that you have in doing some of this impactful work in a space like Minnesota, and having to move around and, like you said, lean into other communities that are doing this work in different lenses, and kind of speak to more on that statement you kind of just made, because I found that a very prominent statement.
So I'll try to answer that as best I can, and I believe this is maybe the last question, because I know I'm eating into y'all's membership meeting time. Do I think it's unique to Minnesota? I think it's a Midwest phenomenon, not just Minnesota, but I would say that I mean, Minnesota is home in what I know. So I can't really, I can't speak to other places, but I think it's a Midwest phenomenon. When you think about work that's happening on the coast, oftentimes it's being influenced by people who are traveling, coming into those cities and going back and bringing things from, Europe and from other places, right? There's a lot of exchange happening. Or you think about cities that are prominent, where there's a prominent university. So there's a lot of exchange of ideas and infusion infusion of ideas that are happening, which makes everybody's work better. Whereas in a community like Minnesota, where we tend to be more closed off, there's not as many people coming here from other places. We have a kind of an echo chamber where we're talking to ourselves about the problems here, about what we seek to do about them, but we don't always have enough influence from other people in other places that is contributing to our work being better. So that's what I meant in terms of the importance of going and seeing and connecting with people that are doing work similar to what we seek to do, or dealing with challenges that we're seeking to solve, because it'll make your work better. It'll make you better as an individual person, and it'll make your work better. And you have something to contribute to other people's work as well. So it puts a spotlight on Minnesota in a different way than is the case when people just think of us, you know, they think of the snow, they think of Prince. Well, and unfortunately now they think of George Floyd, right? But they don't know, but that's it. That's it. That's even in 2021, that's all people know about Minnesota, that you still get, what? There's Black people there? Who knew? So I hope that answered your question a bit. And I appreciate y'all's time so much. And I thought this was gonna feel really long. It went so fast. Y'all got my contact information. Anybody can reach out to me anytime about anything. I'll do my best to get back to you. I'm not always the best with email, but hit me up a couple times. And I will make it a priority if you also tell me you were at the Minneapolis Urban League Young Leaders event, because I have affection for all of y'all.
Thank you. Thank you. And thank you again. It's with much gratitude that we were able to open this space and share this space with everybody. This is our general body meeting. So generally what happens is we have a presentation, a workshop to start us out. And then we kind of get to know you guys, and we just hold space for public access as a general body. Our president is still multitasking to between. Oh wait, we could stop this part, right? To stop the live. Thank you, Ms. Cummings, for sharing your time with us. We look forward to following up soon and continuing to collaborate in this mission-driven work. Thank you. For everybody else, so now this is the part of the meeting that lasts pretty much for the next 20 minutes, where you get to be introduced to our ELT and just learn a little bit about us. So as I mentioned at the top of the program, that the Urban League Twin Cities is an advocacy organization that works to, one second, let me pull up my script. Don't shoot me.